Hello everyone, this is Miss Levy and we are here with AP Human Geography and we are reviewing 11.2, which is how does a manufacturer decide where to locate their factory. We're focusing on the situation factors here in 11.2. The following video will focus on the 11.3 factors, which are those site factors. So let's start with just reviewing some basic concepts. So remember, when we talk about industry, and the goal of any business, when that goal for every business is not just to make money. Please get that concept out of your mind. It's not just to make money. Their goal is to maximize their profit. That means to make the most money they can by minimizing those production costs. So in order to maximize, and profit equals your revenue, so what you sell and how much you sell it for, minus your production costs. So that revenue minus your costs equals your profit. How do you increase that profit? Well, you either increase your revenue or you decrease your costs, or you do both. So we want to maximize our profit by minimizing our production costs. And what is the purpose of these 11.2 and 11.3 when we talk about Weber's least cost theory especially? We're talking about how does a manufacturer decide where to locate his or her factory. So the purpose of this is to explain overall, what are we looking at? How do they decide where to locate the factory? And we're going to talk about situation costs here in 11.2. The next video, we're going to talk about 11.3, the site factors. And remember, we will begin to use very concept-specific terms. When we look at the terms of inputs, inputs equals your raw material. Sorry about that. That just came up on the screen there. For this slides. Inputs equals your raw materials and your outputs equal your finished product. So here we have, let's start with Weber's least cost theory. Weber's least cost theory, he's talking about what are the costs. And in Weber's least cost theory, the most important costs were transportation. And historically, Weber's theory was an adequate and exemplary understanding theory of how does a manufacturer decide where to locate his or her factory. And at his time, when he created this model, transportation was the most important cost. When we look at most manufacturing today, for most manufacturers today, labor is the most expensive cost. So according to Weber's least cost theory, transportation was the most important cost, and you had two options in terms of where to locate. You either locate near the raw material or near the market, the consumer. That's why this is situation, because where is it in relation to? You either locate it in relation to the raw material or locate it in relation to the market, the consumer. The site factors are those locational features that are very specific to that particular place. That's why it's site. Site features are those that are present in that location. Situation is where is it in relation to the raw materials and the market, the consumer. So again, when we talk about situation and we're talking about where to locate, inputs equals our raw material. You're going to locate your factory as close as possible to buyers and sellers. The cost of transporting the finished product is greater than the cost of transporting your raw materials. Then your optimal plant location, that means your best location, is as close as possible to the consumer, the market. That's called bulk gaining. If the cost of transporting your raw materials is greater than the cost of transporting your finished product, then your optimal plant location is near the source of the input, or what we call bulk reducing. Now, a lot of manufacturing example would be steel. And when manufacturing steel, it has two major components. Steel is iron ore and coal. And so when there are multiple components, you want to locate your factory closest to the one that is the most expensive to transport. That's that final statement there, to minimize transportation costs. Because again, you're locating near the raw material or near the market in order to mitigate those transportation costs, because those were the most important during the time. Let's talk about his theory again. Alfred Weber was a German economic geographer. He created this theory in Germany in 1909. And as von Thunen explained the location of the agriculture activities, Weber, he's going to explain the location of manufacturing. In the next unit, 12.13, we're going to learn how does a service, like a barber shop or a Chick-fil-A or a doctor's office or a hospital or a banker, how do they decide where to locate their service? So in 10, We learned about how to locate your primary sector, especially farming. In this unit, we're learning about how to where do you locate your manufacturing. The next unit, we'll learn about that service, the tertiary. And again, you have two options: near the raw materials or near the market, and it all depends on the transportation cost. Let's take a look at bulk reducing. When you're talking about bulk reducing, bulk means weight. So bulk reducing means it loses weight during the processing. So they're going to locate near the raw materials. The final product weighs less than its inputs. You lose weight or volume during processing, so you're going to locate closer to the inputs, the raw materials, and the energy. Goes through this process typically of purification, or smelting to remove that junk, that excess we talked about, because if you transport the junk, that's where you waste the money. So what they do is extract, and then they process, remove that junk right there. Then they transport that closer to the consumer, closer to the market for selling, for consumption. Examples of this would be copper industry, steel industry, ethanol, furniture. That's wood furniture and paper. Copper, really, we're talking about any mineral resource. That could be gold, silver, diamonds, and then let's take a look at what this actually looks like. So here are some examples. We talked about this in class. This bottom left, this is copper, and bottom right, this is gold. So whenever you mine and you pull anything up out of the earth, you can see here the gold, this is the yellow. The copper over here is this brownish reddish color. And when you pull it up out of the earth, the rest of all of this is what we refer to as junk. And so whenever you mine that up out of the earth, you have the option. You can process it right then, because all we want is the pure gold, or in this circumstance, the pure copper. You can process that right there and get that junk off, and then you're only transporting what is your actual product. Or you can pull that up out of the mine, and you can transport that closer to the market, and you can process it there, and then you can sell it. The problem with that second option, taking it close to the market, then processing, is you lose a lot of money. The wasted money is in transporting this junk, because you're going to burn that off. So why? Because transportation costs increase with weight. So why would you waste that money transporting that heavier weight when you're just going to burn it off? That's why you locate that factory right next to that raw material, because all of this is excess sediment, rock, or what we refer to as junk. Another type of bulk reducing is ethanol. Ethanol is made from corn, and you can see that here are our corn kernels, obviously. To make ethanol, they extract this oil out of this and they process it. Bulk reducing means you go from a bigger weight, more bulk, to final product being smaller. Like this is going to be, you can see that gold is going to be far smaller than once we burn off all this junk. Same thing with the ethanol. Once they extract that oil out of that, you're going to end up with a much smaller finished product than what the input is you're starting with here. So same thing, this is bulk reducing. You want to locate that ethanol factory right next to that corn production, that corn agriculture. That way we don't waste money transporting all of this bulk whenever we're just going to take that oil out of that and throw the rest away. So we can see here again, copper industry in North America. You can see where the copper mines are, a lot here in Arizona. And then you can see those smelters and refiners are right next to that copper mine. That's so they can get that junk and burn it off there. And they're only transporting their pure copper at that point. That's how you negate those increased transportation costs, is by not transporting junk. Same thing with our steel mills. So you see our major iron ore, you see our major coal deposits. So we want to locate where we can negate those heavier transportation costs. Steel mini mills. These are mini mills are the ones that take the scrap from the big mills. So they're going to locate right there next to where the big mills are. Here's our ethanol production. You can see, look at our ethanol plant over here. What do we see right next to it? You literally see corn right next to it. Ethanol, you see all of our factories here. They're literally located here in the Corn Belt. Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, Illinois. This is to take advantage of the fact that we grow our corn right here. So we want to have our ethanol factory right next to that corn, so that we're not wasting money transporting the whole kernel when we only want the oil part of that kernel out. Again, bulk reducing. All right, let's talk about who locates near the market. So we talk about bulk gaining, single market, and perishable. So bulk gaining, these are bulk gaining. Bulk means weight, so they gain weight or processing, gain weight or volume during processing, so that increases those costs. So in order to negate the costs of that increasing bulk, you want to locate it, your final factory as close as possible to your consumer in order because the single components of it weigh a lot less to transport than the final component. So you want to get all the single components, transport those the further distances, and then get right next to your market, turn it into your assembled product that is much heavier and more volume, and then you want to process it. That negates that increased transportation cost. One of the best examples of bulk gaining is beverage bottling, especially like soda bottling. Remember, the primary ingredients in like soda are water and then the syrup, the flavoring that goes into it. And we can get water anywhere. So we want to locate those bottling factories as close as possible to our major markets. And then we'll move our syrup to those bottling centers, add the water, and then get those to our consumer, which are right nearby. So for us, major bottling area for many of these would be like in Lakeland. Lakeland serves then all of the Tampa area and then all of the Florida, Orlando area, because if we go ahead and we bottle that soda in California and transport it all the way to Florida, then we've wasted all that money transporting what is really essentially water. We can get that water here. And other examples of bulk gaining would be car assembly, any type of real large appliances like refrigerators, and even big like televisions and such. So cars, you can see that they gain weight during process. So if you look at like the Chevy assembly plants in 1955, you can see that all of them were strategically located close to major markets. That way they can move in all of their components, turn them into finished product, and then assemble them. Like if you wanted a Chevy you lived in Florida, you wouldn't get a Chevy that had been made out here and assembled out here in Oakland. That's because it's a waste of money for them to transport that finished product all the way to Florida, because that finished product weighs so much more than the components. Again, assembly plant in 2003, you can see located strategically near the markets. Same thing with Saturn. Let's talk about single market. Single market we talked about. There's one market for that, and if you want to be in that market, if you want to be in that business, you better be in that market. Example would be high-end fashion or modeling in the United States. If you want to be in high-end fashion in the United States, you better be in New York City. Same thing, if you are in casinos and you make slot machines, or you make blackjack tables, the largest market in the United States is in Las Vegas. So if you want to make the most money, you better locate in Las Vegas. If you make SpaceX rockets, and SpaceX rockets are in Kennedy Space Center, then you need to be located there at Kennedy Space Center. Another example would be if you make the buttons that go on Gucci shirts. So your button manufacturing business better be right next to that Gucci shirt manufacturing. Another example would be like a car manufacturing part company like Forcia. Forcia makes parts that go into Ford vehicles. So let's say Forcia makes the steering wheel that goes into Ford F-150. Where do they locate? Right next to where they produce that Ford F-150. Last is perishable. Perishable has to be near the market because it spoils. This would be like fresh products like bakers and milk products. And then newspapers, because yesterday's news has no value. Spoiled products have no value. Obviously, whenever we went through like canning and frozen foods, that changed the marketplace, but fresh still needs to be located because it's perishable. Again, this sums up our Weber's least cost theory here if you want to read over this slide. Finally, when we talk about transporting, remember we talked about the cost of transporting decreases as the distance increases. And when we talk about truck, rail, ship, and air, when we use each. Thank you.